Now we're good.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Jed. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gina Midico, TAC Planning Chair. Welcome to the March 14th, 2024 TAC Planning meeting. And happy Pi Day to those who celebrate. Our Pi Day celebration at the county is going on right now, and I am missing out. But hopefully there'll be leftovers after the meeting. Just a reminder to everyone, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on Met Council's website. The agenda has the meeting norms, which are helpful guides, especially for that recording process. So please be mindful of those. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions, suggestions, or changes for that? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved as stands. The next item is a roll call item, and that is the approval of the January, I believe it's January 11th TAC Planning meeting minutes. We did not meet last month. And so hopefully everybody's had a chance to review and look at those. Do I have a motion to approve those?
This is David Burns. I'll make a motion to approve the February meeting minutes.
Thanks, Dave. And I think it is the January, technically the January meeting minutes, since we didn't meet in February. So yeah, we have a motion.
January.
Thanks, Dave. And a second from Casey. All right. Thank you. Jed, please take the roll.
Jack Forsland, Anoka County. Dan Ruiz, Brooklyn Park. Whitney Schroeder, Carver County. Charlie Howley, Chanhassen.
Hi.
Gina Midico, Dakota County.
Hi.
Casey Atkins, Hennepin County.
And I just also wanted to share that next month, Ashley Morello, a principal planner at Hennepin County, will be taking over for my role in TAC planning. You all are in good hands with her. Thanks.
Thank you. Bridget Reef, MAC. Patrick Boylan, Met Council, Community Development.
I note that I will be taking Mike Larson's spot on this from here on. Thanks.
David Burns, MTS.
Hi.
Patrick Haney, Metro Transit.
Hi.
Kathleen Mayell, City of Minneapolis.
Aye.
David Elvine, alternate for Lindsay Brewer, MnDOT.
Not voting.
Okay. Innocent AO, MPCA, or alternate. Kevin Roggenbuck, Ramsey County. Bill Dermody, St. Paul. Harry Dill, Scott County.
A.
Grace Almeida, Suburban Transit.
Aye.
Elaine Katsukos, Transportation Advisory Board.
Aye.
Sarah Allen, Washington County.
Aye.
Chris Hartzell, Woodbury.
Aye.
Chair, there are 12 ayes, no noes, and 1 abstention.
Thanks, Jed. Excuse me. And also, Jed, did you see the note in the chat from Jesse? From voting for Dan?
I did not, but I've got that now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is any public comment. And members of the public are encouraged to email in advance. Jed, did you get any notes from anyone?
We did not.
Okay, is there anyone online that does wish to make a public comment on committee business? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our one and only business item today, which will be presented by Dave Burns with Met Council, and it is for the adoption of federally required greenhouse gas emission performance measure target. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Dave.
Great. Thank you, Chair. 1 second. I just click the present in Teams button. Is that showing up for you all?
Yes.
Okay, looks a little funky here, but that's okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As Chair Mitico noted, this is about the greenhouse gas performance measure target. A little background on that target. This was originally intended to be and will, moving forward, be part of the system performance measure family of our federal performance measures. Those currently and now in the future will include this measure, but currently include the percent of person miles traveled on the interstates that are reliable, the non-interstate national highway system, or NHS, that are reliable, and moving forward, like I said, this, which is the percent change in tailpipe carbon dioxide, or CO2 emissions on the NHS compared to the reference year. And for this particular performance period, that reference year is calendar year 2022. A little bit more background information and requirements. So all states and metropolitan planning organizations must adopt these targets for this performance period, for this performance measure. It must be, by definition here, by federal rule, a 4-year declining target. The initial performance period is from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2025. That sounds weird considering that it is past January 1st, 2022. It is, because this was kind of wrapped up in some overall federal bureaucracy, we'll say that. MBOs, just like many of our other performance measure targets, have the option to either support the state planning target or establish a unique quantifiable target specific to the metropolitan planning area. So MnDOT did adopt a target for the state on February 1st. MPOs have 180 days after that day to adopt a target, which for us is June 30th of 2024. And I'll note that there are no specific penalties for failing to achieve this target, either for the state at this point or MPOs. A little bit about how this is calculated. If the metric is the annual total tailpipe CO2 emissions on that national highway system, and the measure is that percent change in tailpipe, I can say that, CO2 emissions on the NHS compared to the reference year. And again, this is calendar year 2022. All right, so to calculate that, we look at the gallons of fuel consumed on the NHS, multiply that by CO2 on average per gallon of fuel, and the proportion of the VMT that occurs on the national highway system, which for Minnesota is around 48%. And then you get that metric of the tailpipe CO2 emissions, and you compare that to the base year. So fairly easy to calculate, consistent state to state, and gives you a pretty good reference for how things are changing over time. So I want to talk a little bit about the MnDOT approach here. And I will note that we do have Deanna Belden and Chris Behrens from MnDOT here for any specific questions. They kind of led this and steered the way for MnDOT and the state as a whole. So they're more the experts on this than anything. MnDOT wanted to align their targets for 2025 with the statewide multimodal transportation plan, or SMTP. The SMTP target is a 30% reduction in emissions from 2005 levels to 30% reduction in emissions from 2005 levels by 2025, and ultimately a net zero emissions target by 2050. So 30% reduction by 2025 and 100% reduction, if that makes sense, by 2050. Again, for this performance period and this performance target, this is an aspirational, not an expected outcome, but there is merit to it. It is based on Minnesota Statute 216H.02. So this graph shows the historical performance of greenhouse gas emissions on the NHS, and that solid blue line, the dashed blue line represents the SMTP greenhouse gas target down to 2040, and again 2050 would be a 100% reduction, and we have an estimated business as usual in that dotted orange line. Don't want to get too detailed on this, but I will note that the SMTP goal is for all emissions from the transportation sector, which is more than just tailpipe emissions, and especially more than just tailpipe emissions on the NHS. And these two graphs kind of show that. That first one shows basically tailpipe emissions contributed to the vast majority, about 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector as a whole. Sorry, I am not on the right slide. There we go. And in order to achieve a 30% reduction from 2005 to 2025, we would have to have a 22% reduction from 2022 to 2025. So in essence, we've had an 8% reduction from 2005 to 2022. We would require an additional 22% from 2022 to 2025. So achieving that 30% reduction goal of the SMTP, as I said, would require a 22% reduction from 2022 to 2025. Thus, our initial target is a 22% reduction in order to align with the statewide multimodal transportation plan. So there is our proposed target. It is also the MnDOT adopted target for the state. And in summary here, we must adopt a target by July 30th, 2024 to be in federal compliance. The statewide target is aspirational, but it does align with the policy articulated in the SMTP. So there is, again, great merit to that. MnDOT, I will note, is likely to revise this initial target by October 1st of 2024 to more closely reflect an expected outcome as opposed to the aspirational target of the SMTP. At that point, the council will have 180 days from whenever they may adopt that target, likely October 1st, to adopt new targets specific to the metro area or support the new statewide target or stay with the status quo, of course. So with that, kind of a decent amount of information run through fairly quickly, but I am more than happy to answer questions. And I also will note that we do have Deanna and Chris Behrens here in case any questions come up from them. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave, for that. And thanks, Deanna and Chris, for being here for support. I see that Patrick has a question right away.
Yeah, Dave, can you go back to slide 6? And the solid line is the observed data, and then the dashed line's the projected or goal. What it's hard to tell. Is that like 2019 or 18? When's the last observable historical data point from?
2022.
2022. Got it.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so that first big dip, is that sort of the pandemic where we were sheltering in place and there's quite a bit of less VMT? Okay. All right. That's it. Thanks.
Yep. No, good question.
I have maybe a follow up on that. I don't know how frequently we get this data, but so we have the 2022 number, which you said was did you say 8% down from previous, or
From 2005 to 2022, there has been an 8% reduction in the state in tailpipe greenhouse gas emissions on the NHS.
Okay, and now we're looking at a 2022 to 2025 timeframe, and we are in March of 2024. So I guess I'm just sort of curious. I know this is aspirational, but is there any data to show where we are at between 2022 and now, or even the end of 2023 if it's in yearly increments?
Thanks for the question. I don't believe so, but I am going to defer to MnDOT to maybe either confirm or deny that assumption.
2022 number was provided by FHWA to all the state DOTs because that was not yet published. Now, MnDOT does have some, when we had calculated this before, we use our fuel sale data, but for this measure, we are required to use FHWA's data that they've put into some sort of calculation to have an estimate of fuel use on the road. And maybe, I don't know if this is where, I'm sorry, Deanna Belden, MnDOT, I just was memorizing the norms. Excuse me. So then I think, but we would be using updated data and estimates and modeling when we want to move toward the more expected outcome target. And I guess I could take this time to explain that federal measures, they really would like these to be expected outcome targets rather than aspirational. But given that we didn't have information to do an estimate, we made the decision at MnDOT to align with our policy target with the expressly stated that this is aspirational policy level target in alignment with our statewide multimodal plan and based on Minnesota statute. And when we have more information, we would adjust it. Because coming October 1st is when we are doing a mid-performance report for the federal highway. And so we are looking at all of the targets that we set a couple of years ago. We are looking at those and seeing if we need to adjust them. So that was more than you asked, Gina, but I thought that I would share that.
Thank you, Deanna. I was actually going to ask about that October date and what was going to change. And maybe I'm going to ask a little bit more on that. So on October 1st, you do a mid-performance review. Is that just a scheduled thing, or is there more data available? I was just kind of curious about how that process works, or what we get on October 1st to inform this decision.
Oh, I'm not sure that we would get more, but for this particular measure over the next coming months is when work that Chris Behrens is doing. We're working on estimates of what we could hope to reduce from GHG and the transportation sector.
Thank you. All right, I will leave space for others to ask questions. I see a hand. I can't tell whose it is. Elaine.
Elaine Kutsukos with the Transportation Advisory Board. I know that this is going to be coming to TAB in April. I am sure there'll be questions of what TAB can do. And they're picking projects right now. This summer, they'll be picking projects for the 2028 to 2029. So we're redoing the next solicitation is a bigger overhaul. They will probably be wondering what they can do to help get to these goals for when they're doing their project selection, especially when we redo the next solicitation. Just giving you a heads up, you'll probably be getting those type of questions.
Thanks.
Thanks, Elaine. It looks like Charles Howley has a hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So there's a deadline where the Met Council has to adopt this target. It was on an earlier slide, like April something or whatever, right? Knowing that, and you're even documenting it here, that MnDOT's going to change theirs, so then Met Council has to go and change theirs to match theirs. Is there a way to just like ask whomever is requiring this deadline as for an extension, so you don't have to do it twice? Just say, yeah, we're going to set a target, but we're going to wait till MnDOT irons it out in October, and then we'll set ours. Just a thought.
Yeah.
It's federal law or rule. Excuse me, Deanna Belton, MnDOT.
Yeah, this is Dave. A great question. We actually just don't have that flexibility. It's a federal law. We're funded through federal planning grant funds. It's just, we have to, even if it is changed in October. Again, that's not a guaranteed, although everything that we're hearing from MnDOT is that will likely change. We do have to go ahead and just go through the process and have it adopted by July 30th.
Any other questions or comments? Might I ask a bigger picture question and how this relates? And maybe it's review for some people, but Met Council has different performance measures, if I'm remembering correctly, and some of these are federally mandated like this one and with specific timelines. We're updating the transportation policy plan. A lot of us have just reviewed those chapters. And I believe you have additional performance measures that you have more flexibility to adopt than the federal requirements. I don't recall seeing those in the transportation policy plan. Do those come later? And what has the council been tracking for performance measures related to greenhouse gas emissions? This one seems fairly narrow, the tailpipe emissions on the national highway system. I would guess the council and the region as a whole is probably interested in something more holistic. Do we have those anywhere?
Jonathan, go ahead if you'd like to ask that question.
This is Jonathan Ehrlich from the Metropolitan Council. The answer is yes. So the TPP will include federally required performance measures, including this one, and also will have a set of performance measures that we're working on at the moment that will relate to the objectives of the plan itself, and those are going to come to the TPP technical working group in April.
Thanks. Anybody have any more questions? Oh, Cole.
Chair Medico, this is Cole Henniker, planning at council. One other thing to add on to Jonathan's comment is that the performance measures for the TPP are intended to be those longer range, and all of these federal performance measures are more short range. They're more targeted towards like your TIP, your near-term investments. So in some cases, clearly your targets might be different, but also we might even have a slightly different iteration of the measure because the longer term measure might be different than, say, what's the next 2 years look like. So we acknowledge all the federal measures, but you might see some subtle differences between them, like Jonathan was saying. And just noting that context, that these are all the federal measures are generally 4 years or less in terms of their time frame.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? This is an action item, and so the recommended motion is there on the screen. That TAC Planning recommend adoption of a federally required greenhouse gas reduction target on the national highway system for the MPO planning area. Is anyone interested in making a motion?
This is Kathleen Mail, motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mayel, a second.
Second.
Was that
Sorry.
Patrick?
Patrick Boylan, Metropolitan Council, second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any additional questions or discussion? If not, Jed, please take the roll.
Forsland. Struve.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Howley.
Aye.
Minico.
Aye.
Atkins.
Aye.
Reef. Boylan.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Haney.
Aye.
Mayel.
Aye.
Alvin.
Abstaining.
Ao. Roggenbuck. Dermody. Dill.
Aye.
Almeida.
Aye.
Katsukos.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Hartzell.
Aye.
Chair, there were 14 ayes, no nos, and 1 abstention.
All right, thank you. Is there any other business that any members have? All right, hearing none. Casey, is this your last meeting with us then? You mentioned someone else is taking over.
Yep. Ashley Morello is on the call and is joining us, and she'll be with you for the foreseeable future.
All right. Thanks, Casey. Appreciate your participation and comments on the committee to date. Wish you all in your new role, and welcome to Ashley. We will see you next month.
Thank you.
And Cole, you have your hand up. Oh, I think I was supposed to say something.
And I'll
About
let
the
you say
schedule?
that, but I'll one other topic. I know there's some differences from agencies in terms of their TAC planning member versus their TPP technical working group. So I wanted to just make you all aware of this, that the TPP will be scheduled to be recommended for release for public comment at the June meeting of TAC planning. We were going to propose to the technical working group today that they have their last meeting in May, and if they want to forward any comments for the TAC planning to consider, that they do it at that meeting. So those would be informal advisory comments. And so we do have, as Jonathan said, we have more topics next month for that group, but the May meeting would really be held to give any comments to TAC planning as you start acting on the plan. So more of an FYI there. If you have different members across them, make sure to coordinate on that, and look forward to that discussion in May. So, and then if you want to cover the schedule thing, Gina, and the longer term TAC planning thing, I'll let you tackle that.
Yeah, so with that, so we have had an abbreviated agenda while the TPP work group has been going on, recognizing there's a lot of overlap. And so we've been only having about a half an hour, I think, on each agenda. So starting in June, is that right? We will, staff will send out maybe a revised calendar notice that will be for a longer period of time. I don't remember how long TAC planning meetings are now, that they have been for so short for so long, but
They used to be scheduled for 2 hours, but rarely would last 2 hours.
okay. So you can look for that change on your calendars coming up. And with that, any other business before we adjourn? Okay, thank you, everyone. And some of you we will see over at the TPP work group.
Thank you.